ask the question, are you wise? So tonight we're going to talk about wisdom. Where do we get wisdom? Turn to Proverbs chapter 3. We're going to be talking about some things that Solomon said. You know, the Bible tells us, especially in Proverbs, because it's known as one of the wisdom books, that Ecclesiastes, that wisdom is good to have. And wisdom is good to have for a number of reasons. You know, stop and think about it. Proverbs tells us that wisdom brings happiness. Now think about that. Who doesn't want to be happy? Everybody wants to be happy in life, right? Well, if we want to be happy, if we want to add to that joy, then we need to gain wisdom. It says that wisdom is better than riches. You know, everybody thinks about getting, everybody's got this quick rich, get rich quick. I'll get it out in a minute. You know what I'm talking about. Everybody wants to make this money and everything like that. But you know what? There are things that are more valuable than money. And wisdom is one of them. Wisdom is better than riches, Proverbs tells us. It says that wisdom, if we are wise, it adds not only length to our life, it adds quality to our life. You know, people have asked me, Diane and I have had this discussion. She said one day, you ever think about dying? I said, well, yeah, but I try not to dwell on it. I know it's going to happen one day, but I try not to dwell on it. And she said, well, how long you want to live? I said, one day longer than you. And she said, oh, really? I said, yes. I want to just live I want to live just long enough to take care of you for your entire life. And then I really don't care if I'm here anymore. I said, I don't know. The main thing is, as long as I've got my mind, I want to stick around. My body may get old to where I can't get up and do anything like I want to, but as long as I've got my mind and I can stay in the Word. My dad, bless his heart, before he died, his mind started going. But there were many times that I'd show up down there at his house to check on him, and I'd walk up on the deck and I would just listen, because he'd either be praying or reading out loud. And every time he was reading God's Word. I'm thinking, okay, my body may wear out, but as long as I've got my mind and I can sit there and dwell on God's Word and understand it and read it, I want to stick around. Proverbs tells us that wisdom not only adds years to our life, but it adds quality to our life. It says it brings peace, it brings life, it brings grace. It's good to have wisdom. That's what the Bible says, okay? Now, we learn wisdom as we live our lives, don't we? We learn from different types of things. We learn sometimes from other people, and we learn sometimes just through experience, don't we? Sometimes we have to experience some things in life to learn something. And you know what? Learning from experience can be good or it can be bad. We might make some mistakes, and we learn valuable lessons from that, don't we? I learned a valuable lesson when I was in high school playing football. We were playing this team, and to be honest with you, we knew we were better than them. We knew we were going to win, and we did. We beat them 36-0 that night, and I played tight end defensive end, and I like defensive end because, you got to get after people. And, their tight end, bless his heart, he wasn't much count. And I had like 3 or 4 sacks that night on the quarterback. And I thought I was doing good, man. And I got a sack, I got back to the huddle, I said, I'm fixing to get him again. That tight end can't handle it. I got him. And you know what they did? I guess they got tired of seeing me grab their quarterback and put him on the ground. And I was getting pretty cocky. I was getting real cocky. Well, see, in football, and you gentlemen know what I'm talking about, a lot of times offenses will do something called pull in a guard. Now, they had one player on that team that was good, and he was a guard on the offensive line, and he weighed about 300 pounds, and he was fast. And, dude, I took off, I hit that tight end, he goes down, I'm reaching for the quarterback. They had pulled that guard, and that joker, nowadays he would have gotten thrown out of the game because it would have been called targeting. That joker put the crown of his helmet right in my ear hole and knocked me out cold. Next thing I knew, I was laying on the ground, and my coach had the smelling salts doing this, and I finally opened my eyes, and he said, you know who you are? And I went, Tuesday. It's just like, you know, he's scrambling. I sat on the bench the rest of the game going, you know. I learned a valuable lesson. Be aware of your surroundings, because that big joker come off of nowhere, boy, and I mean just laid it to me. Sometimes we learn from bad experiences, don't we? But that still teaches us. It's a whole lot better if we learn wisdom from somebody that's been there and done that. You know what? My grandparents, I miss them like everything. I used to love to sit around and talk to my grandparents and say, tell me about your life. Tell me about growing up. Tell me this, tell me that. And my grandfather Harvey would sit there and he would tell me, he said, let me tell you something. I don't have any education. He had to quit school when he was in the 8th grade because his mother and dad died. He had to raise his siblings, okay? He was farming since he was 10. His dad died when he was 10. And so he had to leave school and go to farming to take care of his family. So he didn't have any formal education much, but let me tell you something. He had a lot of common sense. You know how he got it? From experience, from living life. And it was a hard life, but he taught me a lot. You know, he had all kinds of sayings that I used to love. One of my favorites is, son, don't try to make sense out of something that don't make sense. It'll drive you crazy. That's pretty smart, isn't it? You know? What we need to do is learn from people that already have the wisdom. That's the easiest way. But sometimes we're a little hard-headed and we have to learn it the other way. So what should we learn? Well, I think there's a few things, and these things you're going to think I'm crazy. It's pretty simple, and it's stuff that you already know, but there's a reason that I bring it up, okay? Because sometimes we need to just stop and say, okay, if I'm going to have wisdom, how do I learn wisdom, and what do I need to understand about this life to gain some wisdom? So stand with me as we read. We're going to read in Proverbs chapter 3, and we're going to start with verse 13. Happy is the man that findeth wisdom, and the man that getteth understanding. For the merchandise of it is better than the merchandise of silver, and the gain thereof than fine gold. She is more precious than rubies, and all the things thou canst desire not to be compared unto her. In other words, look, you can obtain all kinds of wealth in this life, and it's not worth nearly as much as godly wisdom. He said in verse 16, length of days is in her right hand, and in her left hand riches and honor. Her ways are ways of pleasantness, and all her paths are peace. Ooh. She is a tree of life to them that lay hold upon her, and happy is every one that retaineth her. The Lord by wisdom hath founded the earth. By understanding hath he established the heavens. By his knowledge the depths are broken up, and the clouds drop down the dew. My son, let them not depart from thine eyes. Keep sound wisdom and discretion. So shall they be life unto thy soul, and grace unto thy neck. Sounds to me like that this wisdom that Solomon was talking about is pretty important. Father, I pray that you would help us to understand your word tonight. Teach us so that we might better live for you each and every day. For it's in your name we pray. Amen. There are some irrefutable facts that I have learned in the short time that I've been around. And I just thought I'd make these or remind you of these, okay? Remind you of these because you know what they are. But there are 7 irrefutable facts in this life. And when you stop and think about it, everybody goes, okay, yeah, I know this, but do we really know it? Do we gain wisdom from these facts, okay? That's the whole point. And so fact number 1 is this. Life is not fair. You know, I used to hear it all the time. That ain't fair. You know, I was chasing a couple of guys one night in law enforcement. I caught one of them. The other one got away. I said, you going to help me out? You going to tell me his name? Well, no. I said, well, you gonna take the charge for the crime then? And he said, well, that ain't fair. I said, what's unfair about it? He said, well, it just ain't fair that he got away. I said, he's your friend. You could have told him to run a little slower so I could have got you both. You could have just got on the ground when I told you to because you made me sweat. Now you're going to jail. Okay? And I looked at him and I said, let me tell you something you need to learn right now. Nothing in this life is fair. You know what? God never told us that life was going to be fair. In this word, you read it, it don't say anything in here about life being fair. Folks, we know life is not fair. You want me to prove it to you? Some people are rich and some people are poor. Is that fair? Maybe, maybe not. Some people are intelligent. Some people are ignorant. I'm thinking on that one, that's not fair because I'm not real intelligent. But you know what? That's just the way it is. Some people are fed and some people go hungry. Some people have good luck and some people, they have terrible luck their whole life. Okay? It's not fair. Some people are healthy their whole life. Some people are sick. You see, God never promised anything in this life to be fair. But He does promise to take care of us. See, we need to focus on what God promises. Not that life is unfair, because God never promised that life would be fair. But there are some things He did promise us in Matthew chapter 6 and verse 33. He says, seek ye first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Now listen, when you stop and think about that, life might not be fair. But if we seek God, and if we turn to God in everything, God's going to take care of us, whether the world is fair to us or not. And so why worry about life being unfair? Look, we know that God promised that He's going to take care of us, okay? Now, God also promised that He would be fair when it comes to salvation. What do I mean by that? God says, whosoever will, anybody can benefit from the salvation through Jesus Christ. He's fair about that. It doesn't matter who it is. If they come to God, you know what? There was something happening this week that just blew my mind. And it goes right along with this fair thing. You know, Terry Grinstead trial was this week. And they acquitted him. Is that fair? Think about his buddy that's in prison. Wait a minute. He got off scot-free. He's the one that killed her. I'm sitting in prison. How fair is that? God never promised that things would be fair. And you know what? I'm thinking, I cannot believe. Diane told me that, and I said, I cannot believe that they acquitted him. I can't believe it. You know, it's kind of like O.J. Simpson. That man was just as guilty as he could be. He killed 2 people and walked away, got away scot-free because he had a good lawyer. And let me say, you know what? That ain't fair. But listen, there's another thing that God promised, and that's what I keep in mind. God promised judgment. So you know what? They may get away with it here, but they're going to stand in front of the judge one of these days. And when they stand before Him, they can't get out of it. But you know what? Here's another thing that I think about. And I hope this happens. I hope it happens with O.J. I hope it happens with that Duke boy. Look, I hope it happens. If they come to Jesus Christ and say, Lord, I am a sinner, forgive me, I call on you to cover me in your blood, save me from my sin, God will save them just like that. You know why? Because God promised to be fair when it comes to salvation. But for those that don't accept Him, He said that He promises judgment as well. Folks, look, if we go through life expecting life to be fair, we're going to be miserable, right? But if we look to God and live our lives, okay, live our lives according to God's Word, then we'll be fine and we won't be disappointed because God's going to take care of us no matter how things turn out in this world. So life ain't fair. God never promised it would be, but God promises that He will take care of us. He will save us. The second one is, you can't change history. Yeah, there's a lot of people that try to change history, especially nowadays, don't they? You know, it just kills me. You know, they want to tear down every monument in this country. They try to tear down every good thing that's been done in the past. And they're saying, that ain't what really happened. You know what they're really saying? We just don't like that it happened, so we want to try to change history and say it doesn't exist. They're trying to rewrite the history books. They are rewriting the history books, you know? And they're changing it to something that I don't even know where they get this stuff. I don't know where they come up with the things. But they just want to ignore what they don't like. But you know what? The past has already happened and it's fixed. You can't change it. You can't go back. Think about this. Once you say something or do something, it's done. You can't change it. You can't change it. Folks, now stop and think about this. You know, Paul said, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forth into those things which are before, I press toward the high mark of the calling of Jesus Christ. Let me tell you something. Once you say it and once you do it, it's done and it can't be changed. You can't change history. Boy, you know what? Now stop and think about it in this respect. If you can't change history, once you say it, once you do it. Now, we're talking about making decisions here. Deciding what to say in a certain situation or deciding what to do. Once you do it or say it, you can't change it. So that ought to, knowing that once we do that, it's fixed and it can't be changed, it ought to make us start thinking, maybe I better be real careful before I say something. Maybe I better be real careful before I make this decision. Maybe I better spend some time and get some of that godly wisdom and find out what God would like me to do in this situation before we do it. Because once it's done, it's there. And here's the other thing. I talk about once you say it or do it. Folks, listen. This is something we really need to pay attention to in the church and as Christians. Words have meaning. Words have meaning. And you know what? Words have consequences. Stop and think about this. When you were a kid, your parents probably told you this. You tell them that somebody at your school said some bad things about you. And they look at you and say, sticks and stones may break your bones, but words can never hurt you. Is that true? Words are very hurtful sometimes. Why? Because words have meaning. Words have meaning. You know, I don't know who came up with that little rhyme. It was probably to keep kids out of fights at school. You know? And I don't understand that. When I was in school, if me and somebody had a disagreement, we'd go out behind the gym, duke it out a little bit, and we'd go sit down and have lunch together, and we were good from then on. You know? And back then, if you got caught fighting, they didn't send you to jail. Now they just call the police and they take them to jail or put them in juvenile. Look, we just got a whooping and it was over. You know? I mean, we learned pretty early. Let me tell you something. Words can be very, very hurtful. Let me read something to you. Matthew chapter 12. I'll get to it in a minute. I thought I had it marked, but I didn't. Matthew chapter 12, verse 36 and 37. But I say unto you that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give an account thereof in the day of judgment. Ooh, that's Jesus talking. That's red letter. Okay? But I say unto you that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give an account thereof in the day of judgment. For by thy words thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned. Now that's Jesus saying that. Folks, I think he's probably trying to tell us something here. And what he's trying to tell us is, choose your words carefully. Choose your words carefully. Choose the right words. Don't say those things that are bad. Think about it before you say it. You know? I can't remember how we used to say this. You might ought to engage your brain before you start opening your mouth. Okay? And you might say something not thinking that it's going to hurt that person. But it might. And folks, once it's out there, you can't change it. It's part of history at that point. Words have meaning. I read somewhere, I can't remember, I think it was in a Ravi Zacharias book, that he talked about words have consequences as well. And he talked about Hitler's book, Mein Kampf, My Struggle. Okay, that's a real thick book. Y'all ever seen it? And I can't remember how many thousands of words are in that book. But he said that somebody had done some research and they counted the number of words in that book. And for every word in that book in the Second World War, there was like 100,000 people that died. And you tell me that words don't have meaning and words won't have consequences? Oh yeah, they do. They do. Think about all of the pain and suffering this world endured just because one man said a bunch of words. You know, words do have meaning. Diane brought this to my attention. It's one of the amendments that we're voting on has to do with securing our borders. Have y'all caught this? It's a survey question, okay? Survey question. So, did y'all catch it? Did y'all read it? Securing our borders. B-O-A-R-D-E-R-S. Does that change the meaning? Absolutely it does. Our border, B-O-R-D-E-R, okay, if we want to secure that to keep people from just flooding in, okay, or do we want to secure the people that are flooding in? You see what I mean? People don't stop and think about the words. Words are important. And Jesus in Matthew said, every idle word that comes out of your mouth, you're going to give an account for. And by your words, you'll either be justified or you'll be condemned. Ooh, that ought to make us think before we speak. Here's another irrefutable fact. Choices have consequences. You know, I was taught that pretty early. You know, I was taught pretty young that if my parents told me not to do something and I did it anyway, there were going to be consequences. Y'all know what I'm talking about. And you know what? It's the same way as an adult. You know, I used to think, boy, if I ever get out of my house, if I ever get out of this house, if I ever get out on my own, I can make my own choices, I can do what I want to, but guess what I found out? There are still consequences for your actions. There are. You know, and we don't think about that sometimes. Folks, there are consequences. We make choices in our life. Where do our choices originate? You know, when we start trying to decide something, where does that originate? It originates in our heart, moves to our mind, and then we act on it, don't we? Yeah, it originates in the heart. But listen, the Bible says, oh, well, Newton, you know what Newton's third law of motion was? You remember that? Some of you teachers in here? Newton's third law of motion. You remember what it says? It says this: for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Y'all remember that now, right? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. What does that mean? That simply means this: there are consequences. Take a pendulum. You ever seen a pendulum? Okay, and you start that thing over here. Boom, what happens? Boom, the one on the other side takes off. But guess what? It's coming back. And this one's going to fly. What is that? That's an equal and opposite reaction, isn't it? There's always consequences. Let me see if I can find something right quick in Galatians. I can't find it as quick as old Bible's real back there, Lane. Galatians chapter 6, verses 7 and 8. Listen to this. Be not deceived. God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. When I read that, guess what I think? Consequences. Consequences. Verse 8 says, for he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption. But he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. Consequences. We can make good choices and we can reap the benefit, or we can make poor choices and we can reap destruction. That's what God's telling us here. He's saying there are consequences for your actions. Let me ask you a question. David. Did God love David? Absolutely loved David. Look, David was a man after God's own heart. Was David a good person? Sometimes. But there was a period in his life when he wasn't a really good guy, you know? Because he stole a man's wife, had the man killed, had an illegitimate child and everything. And so when the prophet came in and said, look, God knows what you've done, and David was all repentant and everything, what did he say? He said, that's all right. God's heard your cry, and he's going to forgive you. But because of the sin, the child will surely die. That's a horrible consequence. Oh, Lord. That's terrible. The child died. God's very clear in his word. Look, we can make choices, but there are consequences for our choices. And we need to understand that. So if we understand that, maybe we should make good choices, right? You see, all of these things that I'm talking about, these irrefutable facts of life, here's the thing. if we learn from these, it will help us gain wisdom. We gain wisdom if we realize that there are going to be bad consequences for bad choices. Maybe we learn to make good choices, right? And to make choices based on the Word of God. Here's another one. Opposition will come when you do the right thing. You know, whoever thought that doing the right thing would cause you problems? You know, in America nowadays, we could say this. You know the old saying, no good deed goes unnoticed? Nowadays, it's no good deed goes unpunished. You try to do something nice, you try to do something good, something that's right, and somebody's going to oppose you. And you know what? The Bible tells us that's the way it's going to be. Jesus said, blessed are you when men revile you and persecute you and speak evil, all manner of evil against you for my name's sake. He said, blessed are you when they do that. And what's he telling us? He's telling us, look, you stand up for me, and there are going to be people who oppose you. He also talks about us being in the world, but not of the world. And he said, if you are in the world, but you are not of the world, then the world will hate you. Look around. Does the world like Christians nowadays? No. You know, they don't have a problem with Unitarian Universalists. They don't have a problem with those denominations or religions. They don't have a problem with the Muslims. They don't have a problem with Islam. You know, they promote that. They can't understand why nobody likes them. But you let them know you're a Christian and they're going to hate you immediately. You know why? Because in Christianity, they have to face the fact that they're sinners and they're wrong and they don't like that. And they have to put a face to what they don't like, and guess what the face is? It's mine and yours. The Christians. They don't like us. Opposition will come if you try to do the right thing. You know, I know I use examples from this law. When I was in law enforcement, I had the displeasure of arresting some people. One of them was a GBI agent. And I got him for DUI. And I took him down to jail, and I called the GBI office in Perry, which is where he worked out of, but he lived in Warren Robin. And I knew the guy that was the number 2 guy in command in the Perry office, so I called him at home. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning when I called him. And when he answered the phone, he said, "Who you got?" And I told him. He said, "I'll be down in a few minutes." And he came down there, and I told him what I had and everything. Long story short, he got fired. Okay? He got fired for GBI. But here's what I found out. He had been stopped 8 times prior to me stopping him. He was drunk every time he got stopped. And the officers that stopped him, instead of arresting him, put him in the car and took him home. And I'm thinking, no, right is right, wrong is wrong. This man knew the law, and he willfully and repeatedly broke the law. What kind of message does that send to people out there? And I said, no, I think we're going to go this way. You know who I caught the most grief from? People in my own agency. Can't believe you locked up. I said, I tell you what, if you ever catch me driving drunk, lock me up. They said, you don't drink. I said, if you ever catch me drinking and driving, lock me up. You know what? They knew they'd never catch me because I don't do it. But I did the right thing. I slept well that night. I still sleep well. I did the right thing. And it was tragic that he lost his job. He's still in law enforcement, working at a county pretty close to here. But folks, I did the right thing. And because I did the right thing, I can lay my head on the pillow tonight and go right to sleep. But just know this, that when you do the right thing, you're going to be opposed for it. Here's another one. But you know what? Do the right thing anyway. Do the right thing even though you know opposition's coming. You know? I tell people this all the time. I tell people, look, God loves me, Mama loves me, my wife loves me, I'm good. It don't matter if you love me or not. Those 3 love me. I'm good. And I'm going to do the right thing because I know they're still going to love me. Do the right thing anyway, even though it may mean you are opposed at some point. Do the right thing. Next one is things change. Boy, people don't like change, do they? People don't like change. You've heard this one, just when you think you've got it figured out, you realize you don't. And that's true just about every time, isn't it? People don't like change. We get set in our routine and we want things to go just that way. And we, even our lives, we figure out, okay, this is what I'm going to do with my life, and I start doing this, and then all of a sudden something unpredictable happens, and all of a sudden you're doing something different, and your life is not turning out the way you thought it would. You know what? That's life. Sometimes that happens, okay? Let me tell you something. When I was young, I never thought I'd be doing this. Never thought it. But God had different plans, right? I had to change my plan to do what He wanted me to. And I thought, okay, I'm going to be a pastor for the rest of my life. But then God had other plans, and I wound up on the streets, okay, doing that for all those years. But God was faithful, and He said, look, I just moved to a different ministry for a little while, but now you're going back. And I'm thankful. But you know what? Things don't always work out like we want them to. Life is unpredictable. Things change. You know what? If you go to Ecclesiastes chapter 3, I remember when I was in school up in Virginia, big Christian school up there, and the principal at that school, he was a retired public school principal. He was at George Washington High School in Danville for many years, but when he retired and this Christian school started, they went to him and said, we think you would be the best person for the job. Would you come and be the principal at this Christian school? And he did, and I'm glad he did. And his name was E.L. Motley, Mr. Motley. I'll never forget him. Nicest man you ever want to meet. He got along great with all of the students, man. He used to just talk to us in the hall. But let me tell you something about that man. He'd snatch a knot in you in a heartbeat if he needed to. Okay? Everybody respected him. And one day, he walked up to me and he said, I want to ask you what your favorite passage of Scripture is. I said, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. And he said, that's a good one. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Started quoting. And I said, well, Mr. Motley, what's yours? He said, Ecclesiastes chapter 3. For everything there's a time and a season under the sun. Now you go to reading that in Ecclesiastes and it says there's a time to plant, a time to pull up. There's a time to be born, there's a time to die. There's time to be at peace, there's time to be at war. You know what? Things change. That's what that's saying. In this life, there's a time for everything, and nothing is predictable. Things change. We need to get used to change. And God's Word is the only thing in this life that never changes. God's Word is the only thing that never changes. And that's why Solomon says, you need to get some wisdom, but wisdom only comes from the Word of God. And we need to have that wisdom, that the only thing that doesn't change is God's Word. So you know what? If we don't like change, and most people don't like change, we get in our own little routine and we want to keep it that way. But let me tell you something. The only thing that doesn't change is God's Word. So what should we base our life on and base our happiness on? Is it our routine? No. We ought to base it on the Word of God. Because if we base our life on the Word of God, and we know that change is coming, and we know how God operates, and we know how God works in our life, that it doesn't matter what kind of change comes along, we'll be okay because we're living in the Word of God and not in this world out here. You see, we need to live according to God's Word and not some routine that we put ourselves in. And Solomon says that's where wisdom comes from. And the last one I shared with you this morning. Everybody dies. Fact of life, isn't it? Everybody dies. And this is probably the most unavoidable, irrefutable fact that's on my list here. Is that everybody dies, no matter who you are. We don't know when. We don't know how long we're going to be here. We don't know what God's got for us while we're here. But the Bible says it is appointed unto men once to die, and after this, the judgment. So how will we be judged? You know what this is telling us? And this is probably the greatest wisdom that we could ever tell anybody, is be prepared to die. Be prepared. Now, when I say be prepared, what am I talking about? I'm not talking about the financial stuff. I'm not talking about having your arrangements made. I'm talking about spiritually be prepared. Know Jesus Christ as your personal Savior. That's the important thing when it comes to death. You know what? There's a many times, I told y'all, I lay down at night and I sleep real well. And I thank God for the day. And I say, God, your will be done. And I go to sleep and I sleep like a baby. You know what? I may wake up in heaven. Might happen tomorrow. I don't know. But let me tell you something. Every day that I wake up and I see the sun coming through that window, I sit up on the side of the bed and I look out that window and I thank God for the opportunity of another day. But let me tell you something. You know, people used to ask me all the time when I was doing that up there, are you afraid of dying? And I'd always look at them and say, nope, ain't ready to go just yet, but I ain't afraid of it. And they said, what do you mean? Why aren't you afraid? I said, because I know Jesus. And I know if I die tomorrow, where I'm going. So it's no, you know, look, if I go there, I'm going to be a whole lot better off. So no, I'm not afraid of it. But then I look at them and say, the question is, are you afraid of that? And boy, they don't like it when you ask them that question. Well, I ain't planning on dying. Well, tell me somebody that is. You know? Tell me somebody that is. There's people running up and down this highway out here every day. They didn't get in that car and plan to die that day, but it happened. You know what? There's people that get up and they go about their daily routine and they didn't plan to die today, but it happened. And it could be some undetected medical problem. It could be a sudden medical problem. Or it could be that the Lord just says it's your time. It could be in an accident. It could be a lot of things. But you know what? Everybody dies. Everybody dies. There's an old Jamaican saying, and I can't talk like Jamaicans, but it said everybody want to go to heaven, but nobody want to dead. You know what? I want to go to heaven. The only way I'm going to get there, one of two ways. I'm either going to die or Jesus going to come back. And you know what? The more I look at this world nowadays, I'm thinking I just might get to go in the rapture. I mean, I ain't kidding you. Every day, folks, I think about it. I think it's neat that my bedroom window faces the east. And I look out over them trees to the east, and I'm thinking, I'm going to hear the archangel shout. I'm going to hear the trumpet sing. And we go. And it could be the day. Folks, we need to live our lives prepared to die. Solomon says that's wisdom. You are a wise person if you keep these things in mind, especially if you keep in mind that one day there's an appointment that you will keep standing before Jesus Christ and God the Father. Are you ready? Have you prepared? That's what we need to be telling people out there. Be prepared. Be wise. You know, I asked this morning, are you wise? You know what? The wisest thing that anybody has ever done is call on Jesus. That's the wisest thing anybody can do. And I hope everybody here has done that. But how many people out there are we telling that they need to be prepared? How many people out there are not ready? What are we doing to help them get ready? Father, we thank you that you teach us in your word about wisdom. And I pray, Heavenly Father, that we would have wisdom. I pray that we would spend time in your word to gain wisdom. We know, Heavenly Father, that wisdom comes from your word and from your teaching. And Lord, I pray that we would gain wisdom in our lives. And Heavenly Father, we thank you that you loved us enough to die for us, to offer us salvation. And Lord, that you want to teach us wisdom and that you want for us to be wise in all things. I pray that you would help us, give us strength to live according to your word and not according to the world. Heavenly Father, I pray tonight that if there's anybody here that you have spoken to, that you would just work in their heart, Heavenly Father. And I ask that your will would be done for us in your name, we pray. Amen. We're going to have a hymn of invitation. If God has spoken, you come as we stand.